Hey everybody, Tom Barnes here. Stories from the 78 out at the DuPage Airport in DuPage County. You know, when I was a kid, festivals were a big thing, big sporting events, races all over the city. And the Goodyear Blimp would always show up to those big events, and you felt special because you were at the thing that Goodyear Blimp was at. And the Goodyear Blimp's been flying since 1925 all over the United States. It's an international symbol. And Goodyear, the company itself, been around since the 1800s. Well, this year, Goodyear's back over Lollapalooza and the footprint of Lollapalooza, flying the entire weekend. Foster the People did something with it last year, and this year they're back. And now I get to go inside and check it out. I've never been in a blimp. This is a bucket list item. I'm going to go inside, get a little tour of the space, and fly over Lollapalooza footprint. And it all starts right here. And like I said earlier, somebody has to be with the blimp at all times because it's not tethered. So just in case wind happens or anything else, they can make sure that the blimp is secure. So I'm going to check that out now for this story from the 78 at the Goodyear Blimp. All right, so when you go on to the Goodyear Blimp, first you got to come from some sort of airplane hangar. This is at DuPage Airport in DuPage County. When you walk out to the Goodyear Blimp, you have to walk out with one of the flight crew because this is a working runway, which made sense in the moment. But the first time we did this, we actually walked from the blimp to the bathrooms, and we didn't have anybody. So then all of a sudden there was like 12 people out there be like, whoa, you can't do that again. So this is interesting. This is how the blimp arrives and hangs out. There's the Winnebago that drives, and then the blimp flies. It doesn't like just show up in that truck or anything like that. This is how it arrives. There's a whole flight crew that sits with it overnight. They bring it up in the air a little bit when the weather is terrible, so it doesn't get bounced off the ground. But there's the truck that it's in, the Winnebago. There's a little bathroom. It's a really unique process, I gotta say. Just because it's something that you would never think that you would ever see. And then, of course, now we got a little bit closer view of it. So we were out there getting a close-up view, and you can just walk right up to it. Like, you're so used to going to airports where everything is off limits. This was very unique. Super cool. This is the day after we had terrible rain. So we lucked out with the weather, and this was right before the other rain that was coming in. So we got to have this firsthand look. There was no wind that day. And the best part is you're looking at the blimp being tethered to the mast, is what they called it. And that is the little cockpit area that you're seeing at the bottom of the screen, where that's where we would hang out when we go in the thing, which slightly terrifying, you know, a little bit, considering what you could think. And now I'm looking at this. Are those all patches on the thing? Maybe it was just what? I don't know. Those look like patches. But that's all helium. 22,000 pounds of helium in this Goodyear blimp. And if you're thinking back when you were a kid wondering, you know, there's the bottom there. See how it's tethered right there to the right? There's one of the air crew right there. They have like 6 people, and they travel with this thing. This is their full-time job. They're based in Akron, Ohio, and they do this thing all summer long, and they hang out in the winter. They do private events, and people have asked, you know, how do you get on one of these blimps? Well, you kind of have to be part of the Goodyear family or get invited by media is kind of how it goes. They just don't offer rides. They do offer like TV networks to put their cameras up in there and they can take these great shots. They do that as long as the promise is that you will mention live from the Goodyear Blimp, which we've seen a million times when you're watching any major sporting event. Yeah, I didn't notice all the little different colors, which I imagine are patches. Anyhow, so this is the inside of the cockpit. This is us getting ready to take off. So there are like propellers and everything, and you hear the propellers going. They like get you off the mast, and then you just kind of go up. It's a bizarre feeling. It almost feels like you're in a boat. There's the mast. Like, so when they let go of it, they take off. Like that thing goes like 100 miles an hour away from the blimp because, you know, they don't want anything to hit the blimp because it is 22,000 pounds of helium that's highly explosive. That is the airport. So we're kind of lifting off here in DuPage near Naperville, Bartlett, areas like that. And this is the ride. This is how it goes up. So, and this is what it sounds like. So I'm going to dip out here for a second just so you can get a vibe. But this is the crew that I was with. Not many of us. That's the cockpit right there. They have all these crazy levers, but this is the view just right here. It's wonderful. Take a listen. There's my handsome mug. Yeah, you know. It was super cool. I was nerding out. So right there where it says Goodyear to the left, that's where the bathroom is. So it's like a normal bathroom on a plane. But, you know, this is the space. And right now you can see that it's tilted up. We were tilted probably a good, 45 degrees pointing straight up. And now this is us getting a little length behind us as we're making our way from the western suburbs of Chicago. And for those of you who know the area well, this kind of follows the route of Lake Street. As far as Lake Street goes, this is kind of the route, which look at that. I even say it right there, over the western suburbs of Chicago. So this is the back of the blimp, and you're getting a look at that little area. That's where Foster the People hung out, and they did their thing in this back part there. And that's the bottom of the blimp that you're looking at right there. I think I just heard myself say this is insane, because that's like the vibe you get, because you see like the little shadow, and then you kind of freak out a little bit because you realize that there's not a whole lot keeping you from falling out of this thing, because you can like open the doors. They're super easy because this is a very controlled environment. But this is the cockpit. This is inside of it. So above us is the giant balloon, and there's one of the pilots there. And I'm trying to get a little bit of a picture adjustment. It's not adjusting here, but you can see downtown through the windows right now. That's why I'm holding the camera there that long. It's just not auto-adjusting. So now we're looking back. We're looking north over the west side of Chicago, or the burbs, and that is O'Hare out to the middle part of the picture. It looks like this city, but the reason why I know it's O'Hare is because A, I live in this city my whole life, and B, you see a lot of airplanes flying into that spot. So if it wasn't O'Hare, it'd be a whole other news story. But this is the vibe and what it looks like over, south of O'Hare is like, the Dunning neighborhood, and then you got some suburbs on that area. But this is the vibe, and you can kind of see 90, 294, 290, all driving or flying, I should say, over the entire footprint. So now you're getting into the city proper here. So it's like the far west side of the city, and you can tell by the video that you're seeing here of the houses, and you can see a lot of 3 flats, duplexes. I say this is Forest Park here. It's right before you get into all that. So Forest Park, Oak Park has a very similar look as Chicago, because about Harlem is the main drag that runs through Oak Park, and to the left of that, or I should say to the west of Harlem, is Forest Park. And all that good stuff. But you're getting into the city here because basically Oak Park spills into the Austin neighborhood. And that is what we're getting to here. So I apologize if it's loud. This is what it is with this video, because I was on a blimp. So I was doing like 12 things at once. So I believe that might be 294 there. I could be way off on that. It could just be another street, actually. I think we're way east of 294. And this is a big road. This might be Madison Street going all the way into the city. So, you're getting through the burbs. There's a couple things in the burbs before you hit the city proper. Now you're kind of seeing the grid system of the city proper. So I might have jumped the gun a little bit. This is inside. To the right there was the bathroom. I don't know why I get so excited about the bathroom, but it's cool either way. And you get to look out. So there's the propellers going. Now you're looking north of the city. Back that way is O'Hare. Behind you now is the western suburbs, the bottom of the blimp. And now, this is pretty cool. You see my finger there. I'm pointing out because I was nerding out here. This is Garfield Park. I got married in this park. So it has a special place to me. So it was really recognizable for the area. If you've never been to Garfield Park, it is got one of the best enclosed areas. It's so beautiful. It was built like in the 1920s. It's got this very Queen Anne Mary looking architecture. That hotel to the left of it that you're looking at there, Jimmy Carter stayed there back in the day. There's a lagoon. There's a whole thing there. And this is the west side of Chicago. So you're looking at Garfield Park, Austin neighborhood, Lawndale. There's 290 to your right, and downtown Chicago. And beyond that, you see Lake Michigan going all the way up the lakefront there. You can see remnants of Lakeview, Uptown, and if you pan a little bit to the left further, you'll see the Evanston neighborhood. But it's a pretty bizarre feeling because it's so quiet when you're up there. Here it is, another look. So now we're flying over UIC. If you've never been to UIC, I played plenty of softball games over you. There's Ogden Avenue, the street that is on an angle. That goes all the way out to the burbs, to like Brookfield and Berwyn. And that's the medical campus right there. You can see the United Center to your left. And this is like the west side, sort of south side beginning, as closer we get to the lake, it becomes less west side and more south side. But right now you would be in the near west side neighborhood, and then you can see the South Loop to your right of the screen there. That is the South Loop, like McCormick Place, things like that. Right along the lakefront, there's a train line that runs up that way, like the Union Pacific, that will take you all the way to Indiana. It will take you to the Pullman neighborhood, Hegwish, Beverly, Tinley Park, out in the burbs, everything that you would want in the travels of a train. But this is the proper now, the beginnings, I would say, of the southwest side-ish. It's more still UIC, what people would say, either South Loop or West Loop. And speaking of West Loop, you're looking at the West Loop right now to the middle of the screen and to the left. So the West Loop, I'm getting under there. I think I might be getting up. I'm sure what I'm doing here. But the West Loop is to the left quadrant of the screen. You can see 290. The West Loop is kind of just north of 290 there, the majority of it. And that is where you got Restaurant Row, some of the best food in the world. And then you have, right now, you're flying over more of the southwest side of the city. And when I say southwest side, I mean near southwest side. Most people wouldn't say that, but like I said, here we are over UIC. That softball, that baseball field I played on. It's really fun. Now you're looking straight north. So that way is Wisconsin and, Milwaukee. There's the Loop. People wonder, what do you mean by when you say the Loop? The Loop is the part of downtown that is in the loop of the L. That's where it gets its name, as in the Chicago Loop. That now more people will just call it downtown. So now I'm inside. There's one of the pilots. Does it alarm you that he's not flying it? No, there's somebody else flying it. But we just wanted to get this look, because when you come up on this look, it's just incredible. Like, it just kind of takes your breath away of this beautiful look. It's just because it's something that you just don't get to see. There's 90, or the Kennedy, or the Dan Ryan, because it kind of changes names. And then you get a little bit more, and you see the south branch of the Chicago River. And then there's a parcel of land that has been in the news a lot lately. I mean, a lot. And the parcel of land that I'm referring to is to the right of your screen, the bottom of your screen, south of that big street that's going over the river. And that is the future home of the Chicago Fire at the 78. Potentially, you see the rail yard we're flying over. That was just sold to one of the owners of the White Sox. Ishbia, I believe is his name. He bought that train yard there. So some argue that the Fire are going to go there, and you can see the beginnings of the Chicago Fire Stadium happening here. And then, of course, to the left of that is the rail yards that the Chicago White Sox perhaps might build a stadium. Look at that view, though. Can you imagine what it would look like if the White Sox build there? It's a big, giant swath of empty land that now you are seeing over. This is now South Loop that we're in. So it's crazy. We're flying over South Loop at maybe I don't know, where are we at here? Cermak maybe, or 13th, 15th in Michigan. We're coming up on Lakeshore Drive is adjacent to Soldier Field that you see right there to your right of the screen. And then you have the harbor that is off to the east of Soldier Field. And then you have the museum of the Field Museum, Soldier Field, Bears, forever to be known as where the Bears play, because I don't think they're ever moving, but I digress. I believe that's Monroe Harbor, or Burnham Harbor. Burnham Harbor to your right, I believe. I could get my harbors wrong because you can see how much I have boats. But you can see that field totally looks like it's ready for the Bears, right? Not really. You see Lollapalooza, which is Grant Park. So you can see Buckingham Fountain in the middle there. This is Chicago's front lawn. There's talk about, and also known as the museum campus, there's talk about making a huge train center right where you're looking to the bottom of your screen. You see the train rolling right there. There's been talk about making this up-to-date train centers that rivals something that's going on in New York City to get people down there easier, because the biggest knock on Soldier Field is the transportation in and out of there is a nightmare. But it's really pretty. I will say that. I've seen many of a Bear game. And look at the first sign of the blimp right there, going over the museum campus, just to the east of the museum, the Field Museum. And now we're over Grant Park. And it's kind of funny. This is the opening day of Lollapalooza, and the grass already looks dead. So, so it was in for a special treat because this week in Chicago it rained like 3 inches in 2 days, which is a ton of rain for the city. But you can see to the far right is Maggie Daly, and what used to be over towards where Maggie Daly is, you can see those are the train tracks. That is that Union Pacific line that comes into the city. That's what it looks like when it's not capped. Maggie Daly Park and Millennium Park, the train lines are capped and you can't see it. That kind of just flows into Grant Park. There is the Planetarium of Chicago, an awesome space. Another harbor, I believe that's 31st Street. That is the beach that's kind of to the right that I probably will show if I pan to the right. I was just so enamored of how pretty the lake looks because out that way is Michigan and Indiana to the right. Now I'm looking due north. So now I'm looking towards like Evanston, Wisconsin, or the Great Mackinac Bridge that is probably, I don't know, a couple hundred miles just to the north of that. But there is Monroe Harbor. That is all those boats there. You can see the breakwater walls. That kind of keeps the waves from destroying the lakefront because people might, who have never been to Chicago, who don't know what Lake Michigan looks like. Lake Michigan, my friends, is a gigantic inland sea, for lack of a better term. The waves can be 10 to 12 to 15 feet high, crash over the giant street that is known as Lakeshore Drive. You're looking right now at the Shed Aquarium. That's that round building right there. And then you come out to the museum campus of the planetarium that's further east. And that is the South Loop where the Soldier Field kind of sits. There's Grant Park and the footprint, I should say, of Lollapalooza. So it's just a fun, sweet vibe. And the view, I mean, you can't go wrong. That lake, though, can get angry and it can do some serious damage. That's why those breakwater walls exist there. So you're looking at downtown. Now we're jumped a little bit north. So that's Maggie Daly Park that you see to the right of the fountain. See how that's all capped off? That used to be all railroad tracks years ago and actual lake. And they built, because the lake used to go all the way to Michigan Avenue, which is where all those big buildings that start up, just to the north of Buckingham Fountain, there's like this big wall of buildings. That's where the lake used to go back in the day. That's why it's called Michigan Avenue, not because they thought it'd be cool. It was because it was literally along Lake Michigan. But now you have Maggie Daly Park where all those train lines. And I come to find out that when they built those train lines, the city offered the land to the railroads, knowing that they would have to fortify the lakefront. And then they did. And then the train tracks wanted to further their footprint in the city, and the city wouldn't allow them to. So they did this crazy land swap where the city got the land back and leased it to the rail yards, but they basically did all the work. So it's the city of Chicago being the city of Chicago, getting somebody else to pay for the work that needs to be done. So now out that way is Michigan, and to the right is Indiana. So it's about 50 miles across Lake Michigan from this point. And you will hit, something like, what am I thinking of here? Michigan cities to your right, New Buffalo to your right, kind of north right, there's the breakwaters. That's what those lines are out there. St. Joe, Michigan, pretty much right across the way of where you're looking at. Saugatuck, right across the way of what you're looking at. And on the other side of Lake Michigan, I gotta say, it looks like you're in California. It's gorgeous. So if you ever have a chance to drive around Lake Michigan, I would do it. I mean, it looks calm today, and it is calm in this video. But I'll tell you what, this lake gets angry, and I've heard many of fishing boats getting capsized, people drowning, the whole thing. Not to scare you. Just don't be an idiot on the lake. You'll be fine. Go with somebody who knows what they're doing. But I don't know. I just love it. So I'm just going to sit here and enjoy it for a second. So there's the museum campus again. This is looking south. You can see the lake starting to bend towards Indiana. There's the Burnham Harbor, where that's where the fancy boats are, if you're not familiar with the city. And there we are. Lollapalooza right here. Look at that front lawn of Chicago. That's Lakeshore Drive to the bottom of the screen. Michigan Avenue runs along the street where all those buildings are, like that red building and all that. That's like Michigan Avenue. We're filming right there. We're doing a live TV segment on CBS at that exact moment from the blimp. And then look at this shot. Look at the water. There's the shadow of the blimp being all blimp-like. It's fantastic. I don't know. I just loved my time up there. This is truly a bucket list moment. I have to thank the folks at the Goodyear Blimp because it is just stunningly beautiful up there. And a little history of the Blimp. They started flying back around 1910. That's where they established their aeronautics department during World War I. They became involved in building airships for the military. In 1925, though, that is when the Goodyear started advertising on the Blimp, and it was a big one. They introduced the Pilgrim, the first helium-filled, non-rigid airship at the beginning of what is now known to be recognized as Goodyear Blimp program. Goodyear itself identifies 1925 as the beginning of the branded airship. So lots of interesting things happening back in 1925. The Pilgrim initially flew with hydrogen, and on June 3rd, 1925, it was converted to helium and flew the helium beginning July 17th, 1925. So every Goodyear Blimp since then has used helium. It's a part of their story. It's not just a fun fact. But did you know that Goodyear built airships, like legit aircraft carrier sized ships up in the sky? It was essential and enormous, and it was more than just this flying billboard. Goodyear used the airships to promote the company. It carried guests, appeared at major sporting events, provided aerial visible branding for the airship. And they say they have built more than 300 and adorned the skies all over the world since this program began. Back in 1930, though, the Blimp becomes a flying billboard with a lighted sign, which, is very fancy. It looks pretty cool. But something interesting happens in 1923. Goodyear and the German Zeppelin, and you all know that from Led Zeppelin, they formed the Goodyear Zeppelin Corporation. It was a joint venture, and they worked together on large, rigid airships. The partnership eventually led to the construction of the famous U.S. Navy airship known as the USS Akron, because it's from Akron, Ohio, and the USS Macon that was from the early 1930s. There's little advertising on those, but they were enormous rigid airships used for the military. The USS Akron were essentially flying aircraft carriers. I'm not kidding, like legit flying aircraft carriers. The USS Akron flew in 1931 while Macon followed in 1933. And that was Goodyear's, wasn't their only simply about advertising. They were involved in some of the most ambitious airship engineering projects in the United States. And during World War II, they played an important role in the military. Goodyear supplied hundreds of airships to the United States Navy. Blimps were used for submarine patrols, coastal and inland portals, training to convey convoys for missions. It was crucial and a distinct part of their history. The Blimp wasn't created as a sports event gimmick. Goodyear had decades of military and aeronautical experience before the Blimp became an icon of America in sporting culture. In 1955, the Blimp enters the sports broadcasting area. Major turning point came in 1955 when Goodyear became the aerial broadcasting flights over the Rose Bowl. So that's when they started doing their Rose Bowl thing. And for decades, the airship has provided aerial views of major sporting events. The Blimp's role is essentially recognized in the NFL Network, where they have aerial shots, have become part of the American pastime of watching the football sport that we know and love today. And yes, it is technically a blimp. And it's an important terminology distinction. A blimp is a non-rigid airship. It doesn't have an internal rigid framework like a massive Zeppelin-style airships of the 20th century. You also know that one crashed, right? A blimp is the modern Goodyear airship are actually semi-rigid Zeppelin NT airships introduced in Goodyear's fleet beginning in 2011. So pretty cool, right? A lot of fun history about the Goodyear Blimp. We're getting back out of downtown, going over the west side of Chicago. Soon enough, you'll see the United Center. It's just a spectacular moment for me, I gotta say. And they told us that we were the 0.0006% of people that got to ride in a Goodyear Blimp. So something that has to do with World War II history and taking down the Axis powers and, bringing freedom to all. Who would have thought that the blimps would have started out that way? But they were a military company helping with the seals, because the blimp also is rubber, right? Like that's how it's sealed, and how that technology works has been used for so many things that I can do a laundry list of things that Goodyear has been responsible for outside of tires. There's the medical campus right there to your left, and then you see the United Center to your mid-left. So I'm going to stop gabbing. I'm going to go away because I'm going to do a little outro at the end of this. But I'll let you enjoy the ride for here until then. Thanks for watching, everybody. Subscribe to the channel if you would. My name is Tom Barnes. Thanks a lot.
There's the United Center, so that's going to be Blackhawks play the Bulls. Oh. Hard to choose the best photo because there's so many good ones. It'll definitely be a slideshow kind of thing. A dump. Yes, definite dump.
That is a story from the 78 from the Goodyear Blimp. Look at this thing. Tom Barnes, Chicago at gmail.com if you have a story from the 78 suggestion. If you have their stories from the 78